Hello, I'm Chris Januszewski, and welcome to the Rebellious Times Podcast. This is an episode within the series for supply chain and logistics, and I am delighted here to introduce you to Phil Krough, founder and CEO of Source It Local. How are you doing, Phil?
Doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right, and not bad at all. A busy week. It's busy getting out of the gates in 2026. We're in Feb now. We're almost in March. How's things going at your end over in Iowa?
Man, it's busy. So we're doing a lot of work with our local Chamber of Commerce. We just got back from Manifest 2026 in Vegas. Lots of training with my sales team and working with my engineers. So
Fantastic.
busy.
Right. Well, let's get into it then. So I always like to start with the guest background, where you're from, and how did you get to where you're at with being the founder and CEO of Source It Local.
Cool. So I grew up in Iowa. I spent a lot of my life here. I went away for the military shortly for basic training AIT. Came back from the military. I was young and it was the right time, so I worked for GameStop for a bit as a store manager. And then I kind of got bit by the small business bug. And that's where I've been for most of my life.
Love it.
So sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I love the whole small business thing. Um, it's close to my heart. I grew up in a small business. I focus on a lot of small businesses now, and I think over time, a lot of pressure has been put on small businesses, especially during COVID, right? And
Yeah.
they call it the holding out of the middle class. And to me, what small business represents is basically freedom. It's that American dream, the ability to go and create something from nothing, feed your family, and live a good life without relying on the corporate giants. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, but that's one
No,
reason why I love what you do.
that's that's it right there, right? It's the beauty of connectivity in a different way. Being business owners and being who we are, you and I get the chance to network, to have these interactions, and to grow our brands and our visions together. It's a little bit further from that corporate dystopian future that they're projecting on Wall Street.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking before the show, I most of the founders I work with and guests on the show are in some way, shape, or form serving small businesses. And I don't generally have billionaires on the show yet. Um, I was wondering, okay, how would I approach having a billionaire on the show? Like, I'd probably have to throw some curveballs. I'd probably have to make some statement, that they're taking more than they need and all this sort of thing. But yeah, we're living in the same world here, and we're trying to do very similar things. So yeah, sorry again, I interrupted you again. I'm going to keep quiet.
No, I love it. Unfortunately, when you and I get on to chatting, it can go for hours. So the script is made up at this point, homie.
Yeah, I'm telling you exactly, exactly.
Um, so yeah, I spent most of my time for the next decade working in small businesses. My background is data and IT and computer and systems and working in small business and nonprofits, it gave me the chance to really interact with people in a way that I couldn't as a corporation, right? And the issues that I faced across all the organizations, some help I gave, we grew, some help we gave, and it was the wrong time in the market and we failed. And small business is a tough, tough thing, especially in Iowa. Just a quick factoid. My entire state is like 1.3 million people.
Okay, so that's the entire state smaller than basically the population of Austin.
Yes, by a long shot. Crazy, right?
Crazy. A lot of space up there. Maybe I could move over to Iowa and get that, that plot of land and the off-road motorbike. But anyway, yeah.
First of all, I know some people. Currently, our Chamber of Commerce for businesses and people that are willing to move here, we have economic incentives because we want to make sure that we're maintaining population growth. Because although we're Midwest, we're actually really high speed Midwest. CFU has the number 4 internet in the country. They have 10 gig to home.
Okay. Good to know.
Small but mighty, man.
Small but mighty. Love it. So yeah, so we're on the subject of small business here. Tell us about Source It Local and what challenges you're solving for small businesses.
Sure. I've had the opportunity to work not only as like the owner of my own companies, multiple different companies, from like mechanic stuff to building houses. I was a tractor mechanic for John Deere for 2 years in their factory. Like I kind of did everything. Um, and one of the things that I've seen across all the businesses that I've worked with is just the lack of infrastructure for companies that make less than $10 million. And that was one of my first buckets that I knew I had to fill, right? So my target demographic is companies that make less than $10 million, which it turns out is actually 93% of businesses in the US. Oops.
Yeah, that's pretty broad. It's pretty broad.
Right. So I've had the privilege of working next to corporations and seeing the benefits of their really fancy software and the advancements that are happening. Programs like Salesforce and Go High Level and some of those other programs that really benefit corporations and small businesses. So I don't like the way supply chain's done. We kind of get into it back and forth because I consider supply chain to be, at least from a top level, point to point solution fixing. Companies look at a problem, they hire a team of engineers to assess what that is, and then they kind of go, this is the correct way. In the real world, those applications don't necessarily hold up. So when I built Source It Local, I kind of thought about an ecosystem. What is small business? And what is it that small businesses need before they can afford to keep the lights on and hire an advertising team, right? So I built, it's a very, very lightweight framework, kind of like a stripped down version of Salesforce, right? It's business management software. And then I'm in the process of building a marketplace right now so that other small business software companies, my friends from around the country, can actually build integrations directly into my software so that I can create a unified small business management software.
Fantastic. What is the core functionality of your platform?
So I kind of, when I talk about the buckets, it's less than $10 million, non-franchised, or less than 10 employees. If you hit 2 out of 3 buckets, generally speaking, we're where you're going to want to be. And what I did was I built a marketing and advertising suite with fully autonomous SEO and AEO built in as a core functionality. And what that essentially means for non-tech folks is that my system tries to organically find you customers as close to you as is possible.
Okay, so we're on that local SEO now, local SEO and AI SEO, for want of many different names for the LLM version.
Absolutely, right? That next generation technology. And then I built a community journal section that allows small businesses to share stories and blog about their experiences or talk about what they have going on. We have a podcast section that's going to be coming in the fall that we're building out now. But I built a hub for businesses that do e-commerce. So we have full e-commerce functionality. Why sell across Etsy when you can sell to Tom down the street, right? Let's cut down on supply chain distribution and try and keep some of those dollars in our local communities. Support the initiatives we believe in.
Love that.
And then just on the opposite side, since I've had the opportunity to work with nonprofit organizations, I know how hard it is to get seen, right? 63% of businesses, small businesses, cite getting seen online as their primary problem. So what I did was I actually made the pro tier of my software completely free for nonprofit organizations and veterans organizations. Here, have my engine, have my software. I believe in you. Let's do the thing together.
Fantastic. And is this national or is this specific to Iowa?
Nope. So this is a US based. When I was building my software, I didn't just think about Iowa. I thought about small businesses as a whole. So I started by building a directory of over 42,000 zip codes. For the record, it's every population center in the country that has more than 200 people in it.
42,000.
42,000. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I started with a directory that was that granular, right? I wanted everybody to be represented, and I wanted to pull digital commerce out of the cloud and bring it back down to the community.
Love that.
You hit that heartstring, dude. You started talking about small business.
Well, that's it. That's where it's at, right? Get out there
Yeah.
in the local community and that whole, you know, where you walk into the shop and you know the person there and their kids go to your kids' school, right? That's the real world. The real world is where it's at. The community is where it's at. Social
Yeah.
media is not where it's at. Mainstream media is not where it's at, and neither is politics, right? It's real people and real connections.
I think all those things were accidents that happened because of accessibility. You know, we didn't plan for social media. It just kind of popped up overnight.
Yeah, and it took a lot of our attention, right? It still takes my attention. I'm on
Yeah.
social media way more than I should be for a person with three three young kids.
I think that it mimics connectivity. And in a time when it's easy to feel disconnected, it's nice to be able to go to a place where you can see something that feels familiar and still be disconnected.
Yeah, for sure. And it's quite nice. The whole subject of connection. I want to share how we connected because it's quite interesting. So we met at Small Business Expo in Austin, right? But I didn't remember that we'd met, and I saw a meeting invite on my calendar. And occasionally an invite drops on my calendar and it's a salesperson just being a little bold. So my instant reaction is I looked at this invite, I looked at the name and the email, I'm like, who's this? Who's this? Is this some cheeky so-and-so just kind of being presumptive? And
Yes.
should I delete it? Should I message him? And I decided, nah, I'm just going to take the call. Like you never know when life's going to bring an opportunity. You never want to, lose the opportunity for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Not that I'm suggesting everybody start dropping calls on my calendar. But I was so glad we did. I was so glad we did. We had this conversation, and we got on well on so many levels.
Yeah.
But back to the Small Business Expo.
Yeah.
So you're a big in-person connection person. I believe you do small business expos across the US, right? I'd love to hear about your experience of actually getting out there and what you're seeing and hearing at these events.
Yeah, man, that's so expos are kind of my life. That now it's really weird because I get to go out and I'm not just, 2 years ago I was a mechanic for John Deere, so I was just Phil with a wrench that would fix the tractor, right? And now today I'm chopping at it up with $300 million plus companies at some of the large scale expos like Manifest. And I got invited to a all sustainable version of Manifest that takes place out in Vegas as well by the guy that puts on the show. He was there at Manifest. We got the opportunity to talk about some of my renewable stuff. You know, that's what small business is going to become more and more. I've read numerous books about global small businesses. I've talked about this for a long time, right? You don't need brick and mortar to be successful. You need initiative and the willingness to build a network. I work with an engineer out of Atlanta, brilliant dude, way smarter than me. Um, he he's been a mechanical engineer for years, and he builds his own signs and he does laser engraving, and that was what he did. Additionally, he went to every business expo that he could get his hands on. I think he said he went to one every single week for 2 years.
Wow.
He, what? I want to be your best friend. You're my role model and hero. Tell me how you did it, right? Imagine the stories. So I'm a huge anime nerd. I was watching One Piece, and he's like, "Are you caught up?" No, there's so many episodes, dude. And he goes, "Okay, I was at a business conference. I got to be in a ramen shop when this dropped, and then I went to a convention where I met the dude, and then I went to my business conference and came home." What? He's like, "I'm a laser engraver. I just own my own business." How cool.
Well, it's amazing. When you're out there and you're in the mix, that's when things happen, right? Things don't happen when you're sitting at home in your little command center basement. It's being out there and getting in the action.
Yeah. I do love my command center basement, though. There's multiple screens. I play Farm Sim. It's delightful,
It's
right?
comfortable, right?
And just as much as I spent time driving across the country, going camping with my dogs and my best friends and stuff like that, seeing local economies across the country, that's where the concept of source at local came from. It was developed over 10 years of tedious Phil beating the thing into my brain. You know, innovation isn't always a flash. Sometimes it's a necessity because that's where you were heading, and you need to give it time to cook. There's always seasons.
So 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
What's your big vision if, long term, if you had all the resources in the world and things work out, like, what would you love Source It Local to become?
Huge. I talk about corporations a lot and how I dislike corporations because I believe in small businesses. And unfortunately, as a corporation now, right? Because I am, I'm a national company that supports small businesses. You tapped into my ethics, dude. I'm sorry. You know, I've thought a lot about what it costs to become a corporation and some of those things. So one of the things that I made the mission of is I would never become a publicly traded company. I want to own it forever so that I can guide it. I don't want my platform to ever strip the identity of small businesses. So I'm working on getting it so that we can overlay custom domains on top of my website so it can still just be your domain. I built a program that we're beta testing. The name right now is called Give Local, which is a charitable donation program where businesses in the community can give back to local nonprofits, and my corporation matches that money in those communities.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds expensive as well.
I think small businesses are worth it. You know, when I think about my company and I hope that it becomes, and what I hope that it always becomes is it becomes a tool for small businesses to get found inside of their community for sure. But it also becomes an engine that allows nonprofits to grow inside of our community so that we can put revenue back into our community, right? As a corporation, especially a national corporation, I don't need all of the money as a software company. I don't have a huge staff. And my target demographic is anywhere from a side hustle to a fully established company, right? So if that's the case, those are the most susceptible, and we need a corporation, in my humble opinion, we need a corporation that's willing to invest in those nonprofits, invest in those small businesses, and say, I'm going to give you a reward and loyalty program to enable you to do more. I'm going to make sure that you're really visible. I'm going to put you on a national database and directory. So not only can your neighbors find you, but the people coming to your city can see where you're at so that you can source local nationally without going through 6 different search engines and AIs. And I'm going to be the place that you trust for small businesses.
That's
That's my goal in life.
that's fantastic. I love that explanation of what you're doing there and how it actually impacts, how it has a potential to impact small businesses because, small businesses need help. They may be very good at baking or, doing some welding or whatever it is they specialize in, but not everybody's good at everything, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody's good at marketing. Um, and so to have a partner, which is in effect what you are, is extremely valuable. And um, what sort of advice would you give to small business owners now who are maybe out there just about getting by, struggling a bit? They've got big competition popping up on the street. Like how can they keep themselves in the game?
Ooh, that's a really, really good one. Man, the cool thing about small businesses is how scrappy we are. Okay. So I work with a company in Iowa. They do laser engraving, embroidery, and a couple of other things. So they kind of started a coalition of forces between 2 or 3 different small micro businesses in that same establishment. You got to share the responsibility and load. You get to commingle in the marketing and advertising. It's really, really good for them. I I got the chance to, I'm hoping to get back on our calendar if she sees this, in Austin, there's a woman whose business model is walking in nature with goats, and she's like a counselor, and her head goat is Goats Malone.
Hang on. Are we talking about real kind of woolly goats,
Yes,
animals? Okay.
miniature
Walking.
goat. He runs around,
Oh,
and his name is Goats Malone.
okay, I think I'd have a go at that. Sure. What's the purpose of? Is it just to cheer people up, or
Yeah. So be bold. That's the advice that I would give, right? When I think about small businesses, we're scrappy, we're fun, we're innovative. We're the things that corporations can never be, right? So don't take yourself so seriously that you go, this is the only thing I can do. If you're a concrete guy that wants to make balloon animals on the weekend, brother, I support you. That's what Source It Local's here for. My platform, everything that we build, all that we do, we're less than $1 a day. I wanted to give businesses a chance. A yearly subscription through me is $360. The reason I did yearly is because my software takes a little while to integrate and to build. Like, you've got to believe in me before I can believe in you, type of thing.
fair enough?
Be bold. Yes.
Be bold. Be bold. Get in the action. Give it a shot. Yeah. And if somebody wants to reach out to Source It Local or reach out to you, where should they go to do that?
So you can go to sourcelocal.co. That takes you to my website. I'm trying to get all my new emails and stuff set up. There will be a landing page on Source Local today, so you'll actually get to see my contact information, how to set up appointments with us. We are getting ready to set our tour schedule because we're working with chambers of commerce across the country to help promote chambers of commerce and also tie into local businesses. There may be a funding opportunity for them so we can support local even more. Um, but yeah, for now, just go to the website, hit the contact us page. You'll get somebody. And if you need Phil, I'm always around.
Love it. Thank you, Phil. My final question. When are you next in Austin?
Brother, for you, anytime. You say the words global small business, brother. I will get on a plane. I will come down. We'll chop it up. We'll go see some small businesses.
Fantastic. Well, I know the Small Business Expo, I think the next one in Austin is in October, but maybe we could even do something before then and get out in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a reason. This is my entire life. My entire life is talking to and working with small businesses and nonprofits. It's literally my dream job.
Fantastic. Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Look forward to speaking again soon, seeing you in Austin, and all the best for Source It Local.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Take care.
You as well.